Hi, I'm Jeremy Kirk with Intel 471, and this is Studio 471, our regular video podcast series on cybersecurity and cyber threat intelligence. Cybercriminals have to stay anonymous online, otherwise they're going to get caught. Mick Deben is a cybersecurity consultant with DMC Group in the Netherlands. He recently completed his master's thesis, and it revolved around creating a knowledge base of some of the anonymity techniques used by threat actors. Think of it kind of like as a MITRE attack, but for these concealment techniques. And it's really intended to give CTI practitioners another way to fingerprint threat actors. Mick, thanks a lot for coming on the program.
Thanks, Jeremy.
So just to start off, tell me about what do you do in cybersecurity?
Yeah, so basically, I'm working for the past 12 years as a cybersecurity consultant, which basically means that I support organizations in their goals around cybersecurity, which in practical could be conducting assessments or internal audits or fulfill temporary functions such as information security officer, for example. So it strongly depends on the customer what I do, but at this point, I'm mainly active in the higher education and healthcare sectors.
Great. And so we'll talk about the what you've created. It's called CLOAK, which stands for Concealment Layers for Online Anonymity and Knowledge. And you posted about this recently on LinkedIn, and it got a lot of reaction from like the CTI and the cybersecurity community. Can you just explain a little bit, about it and how did you get the idea for it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so for my master, I had to conduct research, of course, to finish the program. And I was boggling my mind about a relevant subject to do my research on. One of the things which popped in my mind was that every day I'm trying to prevent organizations from being successfully attacked by cyber criminals, right? And it's not like the problem is getting any better, it's actually even getting worse. So I try to think about ways which could aid the combat against cybercrime, right? And what I noticed was that we are mainly focusing on their way of attacking organizations or individuals, and not so much on how they are getting away with everything they are doing or trying to do. And that's kind of strange when you think about it, right? So I was very curious to figure out how are they doing this. Um, and what can we discover about this whole subject? And it surprised me that there was literally almost zero scientific knowledge on this topic, and also there's very little public information to find about it, except for the guides, of course, where they describe how to achieve these kind of levels for anonymity. So yeah, that was basically the beginning of the idea for CLOAK. And I wrote a research proposal, and I jumped right into it. So that's basically how it began.
Yeah. And so you've written that you analyze like more than 200 operational security guides from both the clear web and dark web sources. So, how did you go about, I guess, finding those guides and then, I guess, extracting some of those unique techniques?
Yeah, so I time box, I believe, for a period of 6 to 8 weeks. I dedicated myself to finding as much as resources as I could find. And on beforehand, I wasn't sure if I even was able to find enough resources to do the research on. So I was kind of surprised that there was a lot of information about it. Um, so I did make some inclusion and exclusion criteria, such as that they have to be written in English, for example. They had to explain why some stuff works or doesn't work. Otherwise, it would be hard for me to explain why something has been added to CLOAK, for example. Um, but yeah, basically, I could find a lot of stuff. And fun fact is actually that I only managed to analyze half of the resources that I discovered. So I believe that I discovered around 450 unique guides, but I didn't have enough time to do everything. So I only analyzed about 220, I believe.
Wow. Because I know on a lot of cybercriminal forums, that we look at, it's not uncommon for threat actors to write total guides on how to do how to do crime itself, like the execution phase, and then also other aspects of maintaining their anonymity. Did you draw on like a lot of those I guess so-called dark web sources?
Yeah, so the majority of sources was coming from the dark web. But at the same time, I think that a lot of true operational security guides are, of course, hidden for the greater public, right? So I can imagine that some sources might be only available behind hidden doors, special forums, or other places where you need someone to introduce you to get access to, for example. So I think there's more to discover here. But this was, of course, everything which was publicly available. So I did not try to buy myself into different kind of sources or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, what strikes me about it, looking at it, and I'm going to link in the show notes both to OPSEC Techniques, which is the website you set up, and also your GitHub, which explains the project, is that it does feel similar in structure to MITRE ATT&CK. Can you sort of, I guess, compare and contrast the differences between CLOAK and MITRE ATT&CK?
Yeah, sure. So MITRE ATT&CK is very good at describing the tactics, techniques, and procedures related to cyber attacks. It does a very good job at that. And it also shows the correlation between those, right? So it's a very helpful framework, I believe, which a lot of people use in practice, including myself. But the main issue is that MITRE ATT&CK only focuses on type 1 cyber crimes, right? Which means cyber dependent crimes, such as ransomware attacks, for example. But there are other types of cybercrime as well. So you have cyber-enabled crimes, for example, when you think about drug trafficking, for example, where instant messaging with preserving anonymity is, for example, a very important part in facilitating those crimes. But that's not something you can use MITRE ATT&CK for. So besides that, there's also more to these cyber attacks, right? You have a phase before the cyber attack, but also after the cyber attack. A threat actor needs to have some kind of level of anonymity, not only during the cyber attack, because he doesn't want that the attack is de-anonymizing himself, of course, but also before and afterwards, they need to maintain that same kind level of anonymity to be able to continue those illicit activities or to prevent prosecution by law enforcement agencies, for example. So and we're not focusing on that. So at least not publicly available information on that. That was very limited.
Yes. And so you write that your qualitative research showed that threat actors undertake concealment on three different levels. Can you tell me what those levels are, and maybe we'll discuss some examples?
Yeah. Yeah, so the three levels are the technical level, behavioral level, and physical level. The technical concealment measures are the most important for becoming anonymous. So you should think about using open source operating systems which have a high level of anonymity built in. They use, for example, live operating systems which don't leave traces when they shut them down, for example. So the technical foundation is very good for achieving anonymity. But to maintain that level of anonymity, they need to have the proper behavior. So, for example, compartmentalization is a very important behavioral measure which they apply, which also has a very big technical component, but it's especially the behavior where it often goes wrong, right? Where they make a mistake and that mistake could lead to cross-contamination, of course, which could mean that some activities could be correlated together, and those correlations could result in de-anonymization in the end. And that's, of course, what they want to prevent. So, and besides compartmentalization, it's a lot of avoidance. So if you go through CLOAK, the measures that are in there, you see that they avoid a lot of stuff like having Bluetooth on, having Wi-Fi on, even carrying your cell phone with you because it signals all the time, right? There's a lot of call home functions. So behavior is really, I think it's one of the most important aspects of maintaining this level of anonymity. And the physical concealment measures are more focused on continuity. So, for example, storing your encrypted data also on other places in case something goes wrong and you have to flee, for example. But also making sure that you're not being followed or that someone can recognize you. So wearing disguises, avoiding routines or patterns is also something they are trying to apply, which of course requires some quite level of discipline to maintain.
I was going to ask, of those three levels, technical, behavioral, and physical, which do you think are the hardest for threat actors to maintain discipline in?
Yeah, especially the behavior. So also by reading all those guides, they often also refer to operational security mistakes others made as sort of as a hard lesson for everyone who's involved in this nature. And what you see is that it's 9 out of 10 times it's a behavioral mistake which eventually led to their de-anonymization and arrest, for example. So I believe that is the hardest part for them. And you can imagine that over a period of time, everything is going well. There is a point in time where you become sloppy or you forget about something, and how small that mistake might be, it eventually could shine some new light on the same case, which could lead to correlating other activities back to you, and eventually they can find more information about you and catch you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't take much, and like you say, it just takes one little screw up, and then somebody's figured out who you are. I wanted to because in your write up you also say the most important behavioral measures are, and the first thing you list is remaining silent about illicit activities, which I find quite funny because there is of course a group of threat actors, or several groups of threat actors that are often really noisy about their attacks because they want to get the community recognition for what they've done. But yeah, if you're doing crime, you probably shouldn't talk about it, right?
No, it's no, it's especially against others. So that's how you should interpret it. So if you're bragging that you are buying drugs on the dark net market, for example, someone is going to tell that to someone else, and before you know it, that information spreads like spreads very big to people you don't want them to be aware of that.
Yeah. You cite a number of use cases for the framework. I mentioned one of them in my intro about fingerprinting threat actors. You also had some other things in there about filling in sort of detection capabilities and things like that. What do you think of some of the practical use cases of this for CTI pros?
Yeah, I think the the most important aspect, of course, is that we can try to identify if there are any gaps in our current arsenal, right? So do we have detection capabilities against those TTPs? Do we have forensic capabilities against those TTPs? Are there some countermeasures that we can apply for each TTP that we see here? And if the question is no, or the answer is no, then that should be something we should care about and look more into. And I believe that more research is required to make sure that this analysis is good and that we can add this information into CLOAK. But in the end, that would be very valuable to know, of course, if there are blind spots, for example, or other stuff that we don't have an answer for yet, because that should be our focus then, because it might open new doors for detecting or fingerprinting threat actors or groups of threat actors, for example.
How do you envision that people, I guess, work this into their workflows then too? Would it be similar to to MITRE ATT&CK when you're, I guess, profiling a threat group?
No, it's not going to be a spectacle as MITRE ATT&CK, I guess, because I think this whole framework or knowledge base is more applicable, of course, for people working in CTI and law enforcement agencies or security and intelligence services, and not so much for the most common organizations, right? They won't look at it, I guess. So the practicability is or applicability is a little bit less than MITRE ATT&CK. But I think, yeah, they can implement it in multiple ways. So they can leverage CLOAK, for example, for themselves when they are conducting sensitive research, for example, to protect themselves, to achieve some kind of anonymity. They can, yeah, look at the available measures and apply them for themselves. And on the other hand, they can try to apply it to real use cases, right? See how practical it really is. So can we identify some concealment TTPs which have been applied not in the cyber attack but around that? And can we use that information to fingerprint someone? That should be a practical use case, I guess. And that would, yeah, provide information on how we can bring forward CLOAK in the future.
And I think you mentioned too, also in the write-up, that this could also be used for, sort of anti-censorship. So people who think that the government is coming after them for what they're writing, it can also, they could also go through it too and see what techniques that they could apply to their own operational security. So not just for, law enforcement, but also for people at risk of that sort of, I guess, government oppression.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So in that sense, you can use it for multiple situations, I guess. And it's not complete, of course, at this point, and some stuff might be outdated, or I didn't verify everything, right? So I just try to identify what is out there, what are they teaching themselves or others about this, and how does that correlate to each other? That's what CLOAK basically is.
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess that brings me to my next question is that we've got, I mean, your write-up says there's 13 tactics, and then there's 109 techniques, 679 sub-techniques, and then 586 procedures. So that comes to a total, it says, of 1,387 unique TTPs, which is quite extensive. I guess, how do you go, what are your plans to maintain it? And then the second question is, how do you go about deciding, is this something that really should go in here, or should it not go in here because it's, I don't know, too ephemeral or something like that?
Yeah, so for maintaining it, I hope we can build a community around CLOAK to improve it. So because I have limited time myself, and I'm also planning a PhD on the same topic. So my goal would be to, yeah, build this community around it, which could be on GitHub, but it could also be that maybe MITRE would like to adopt CLOAK and then give it the same love that they give to attack, for example, and
Yeah.
defend. So that would be great, of course. But I think personally, from my side, my time is limited to fully maintain this. But on the other hand, there are a lot of smart people out there. Artificial intelligence is on the rise, so perhaps we can use AI to collect these kind of sources, process them, analyze them, and add stuff that is missing to CLOAK, right? So I hope the community stands up and uses this first version as a starting point and yeah, improve it further themselves.
Terrific. And so, just as a final question, then, you say you're going to pursue your PhD in this kind of area too. What's your PhD? What are your ideas for your PhD so far?
Yeah, I don't have any concrete ideas. What I do want is do scientific research on this same topic, because this topic is really underexposed from a scientific perspective. And I think more research is really necessary here, because cybercrime is such a global problem. We need new or other ways to look at it, to combat it even better. So, and yeah, looking at CLOAK and how everyone responded to it, I believe that this is really something useful. So that's what motivates me, at least, to dive deeper into this whole topic.
Terrific. Mick, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. So you're welcome.